I learned something the night I realized my reflection was moving before I did. That's when I understood the night shift doesn't just watch you, it studies you, it memorizes you, and eventually it replaces you. Before I tell you what really happened during those nights, take a moment to subscribe to Dark Truth, where I share real psychological horror stories that stay with you long after they end. These are not legends. These are not ghost stories. These are experiences that happened to people like me, people who thought working nights was harmless. Now listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you still keeps me awake when the world goes quiet. I'm a man in my early 30s. Back then, I was desperate for work. I had just moved to a new city. My savings were running out, and night shifts paid more. I told myself I could handle being alone. I always preferred quiet. Anyway, that's how I ended up working as a night security guard at a data storage facility on the outskirts of town. My shift was from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. No coworkers, no visitors, just me, a desk, a set of cameras, and a building filled with humming servers. The manager told me something on my first night that felt strange even then. "If anything feels off," he said, avoiding eye contact, "don't investigate too deeply." I laughed it off. I shouldn't have. The building was massive, long corridors, no windows, artificial light everywhere, the kind of place where time feels fake. During the day, technicians moved in and out. At night, it felt abandoned. The first few nights were uneventful, too uneventful. I started noticing how loud silence could be. The servers made a constant low hum, like distant breathing. When everything else went quiet, that sound felt almost alive. Around midnight each night, I did my rounds. Same path, same checkpoints, same routine. Then, on the 7th night, something changed. I noticed one of the hallway lights was already on. That shouldn't have been possible. The lights were motion activated, and I hadn't been down that corridor yet. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the glow spilling out onto the floor. I told myself a technician must have forgotten to turn it off. Still, my chest felt tight as I walked toward it. The hallway was empty. No movement, no sound, except my footsteps. When I finished my round and returned to the desk, I checked the camera footage. The light turned on at 2:13 a.m. on its own. No motion detected. That was the first crack. After that, small things started happening. A chair slightly out of place. A door not fully closed. My reflection in the dark glass of a server rack looking delayed. I brushed it off as exhaustion. Night work messes with your head. That's what people say. By the second week, I stopped bringing my phone out during rounds. I needed my hands free. I needed to stay alert. That's when I started hearing footsteps that didn't match mine. They weren't echoes. They were out of sync. I'd stop walking. They'd keep going, slow, measured, like someone pacing just beyond the corner. Every time I checked, there was nothing, no one. But the cameras began showing something worse. Sometimes, on camera 4, I'd see myself standing in the hallway, not moving, just standing. The timestamp said it was live. I was sitting at the desk when I saw it. I stood up so fast the chair fell backward. The feed glitched. The image disappeared. I laughed out loud. Too loud, I told myself it was a loop, a system error. But the next night, it happened again, and this time, the version of me on the camera moved. He tilted his head, like he was listening. I didn't finish my rounds that night. At 3 hours a.m., I locked myself in the security office and waited for morning. When my shift ended, I told the day supervisor about the cameras. He stared at me for a long time before speaking. "Do you work alone?" he asked. "Yes." He nodded slowly. "Good." That answer stayed with me. On the 12th night, the humming changed. It grew louder, deeper. It felt like it was inside my chest instead of the walls. I started hearing whispers layered under it, not words. Intent, like something trying to remember how to speak. At 2:13 a.m., every monitor switched to the same camera. Camera FIR, the hallway. I was standing there again, but this time my mouth was moving. I couldn't hear what I was saying. Then the figure looked directly into the camera, into me, and smiled. My reflection on the black monitor glass smiled back. I didn't. That's when I understood something terrifying. The building wasn't haunted. It was awake, and it was learning me. The lights shut off. All of them. Emergency power didn't come on. I sat in complete darkness, listening to the hums around me. Then I heard my own voice behind me. "Don't turn around," it said. I didn't. I ran. I never finished that shift. I quit without notice. But that was only the first night shift story. The second happened somewhere far worse. A place where suffering never sleeps. A hospital. And what I experienced there still makes me question what it means to be alive after midnight. The hospital hired me fast. Night shifts always do. They don't ask many questions, and they don't like people who ask them either. I told myself this was just another job. Clean, professional, safe, nothing like that data facility. I was wrong. I worked as a night orderly in a long-term care hospital on the edge of the city. Mostly elderly patients, people who didn't sleep much anymore, people who stared at ceilings and talked to memories instead of faces. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The building was old, not abandoned old, but tired, like it had absorbed decades of pain and never let it out. The lights were dimmed at night, especially in the extended care wing where most patients were bedridden. On my first night, a senior nurse pulled me aside. "You'll hear things," she said quietly. "Don't react. Don't answer unless spoken to directly." I asked her what she meant. She gave me a thin smile. "You'll understand." That sentence followed me down every hallway. The night routine was repetitive. Check rooms, adjust IVs, bring water, help patients to the bathroom. Most of them slept. Some didn't. The ones who didn't stared at me like they were waiting for me to say something important. Around 1:40 a.m., I heard crying, soft, rhythmic, coming from the far end of the wing, room 312. I checked the chart. That room was empty. The patient had passed away earlier that evening. I stood outside the door for a long time, listening. The crying continued, not loud, not desperate, tired, like someone who had been crying for hours and had nothing left. I knocked. The crying stopped instantly. I opened the door. The room was dark, except for the hallway lights spilling in. The bed was made. No equipment, no monitors, no patient. As I turned to leave, a voice spoke behind me. "Why did you let them turn the lights off?" I froze. The voice was weak, male, old. I turned slowly. A man was lying in the bed. I knew he hadn't been there seconds earlier. I'm sorry, I said. I thought this room was empty. He smiled faintly. It is. His eyes were open, but unfocused, like he wasn't looking at me, but through me. They come when it's dark, he whispered. They tell us when it's time. I backed toward the door. I'll get a nurse, I said. Don't, he replied. They already know. The hallway lights flickered. When I looked back at the bed, it was empty again. I didn't report it. Something told me not to. After that night, patients started saying my name. Men and women who had never met me before. I'd walk into a room and they'd say it softly like a test. You're the one who stays awake, one woman said. They like you. Another patient grabbed my wrist one night. His grip stronger than it should have been. Don't follow the orderlies who don't blink, he whispered. I laughed nervously and pulled away. But after that, I started noticing something disturbing. Some staff members never blinked. They moved smoothly, quietly, always present in dark corners of the hallway. I never saw them during shift change, never heard them speak, but patients watched them fearfully. At 2:26 a.m. every night, the call light from room 319 would turn on every night. That patient had been dead for months. I finally asked the nurse about it. She sighed. Just reset it when it happens, she said. Don't go in. One night I went in. The room was colder than the others. The air felt thick, pressurized. The bed was occupied. A woman lay there, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. She turned her head toward me. You shouldn't be here, she said calmly. They don't like when you see. See what? I asked. She smiled. The ones who take our places. The lights went out. I heard footsteps, multiple, 2 synchronized. The woman sat up. Her face changed, not violently, subtly, like something rearranging itself under skin. Go, she said, urgently now, before they learn you. I ran. I quit the next morning. I told myself I was done with night work. I told myself I'd learned my lesson. But desperation has a way of making you forget fear. The third job was supposed to be harmless. A 24-hour parking garage. Cameras, booth, simple. I should have known better by then, because that garage taught me something worse than fear. It taught me the night can recognize you, and once it does, it doesn't forget. The parking garage smelled like oil, damp concrete, and old rain. It was 8 levels underground, connected to a shopping complex that shut down completely. After 10 p.m., once the gates closed, no new cars came in. My job was to monitor the cameras, respond to emergency calls, and make hourly patrols on foot. My shift was from 11:00 p.m. to 7:00 a.m. alone. The supervisor explained the rules quickly on my first night. Don't take the stairs between levels 3 and 4 after 2 a.m. Use the elevator only. I asked why. He shrugged. Camera blind spot. That was a lie. I found out later. The first week passed quietly. The garage was mostly empty. A few cars here and there. Occasional footsteps from late shoppers rushing to their vehicles. Once the complex shut down, the garage felt sealed off from the world, like a bunker. Sound traveled strangely underground. Footsteps echoed too long. Coughs sounded like whispers. Even my breathing felt amplified inside my head. On my third night, while doing my patrol, I heard someone whistling. It came from below me. A slow, tuneless whistle, off-key, casual. I stopped walking. The whistling continued. I leaned over the railing and looked down. 5 levels below, I saw a man standing beside a car. He wasn't moving, just whistling. I called out, "Garage is closed. You need to leave." The whistling stopped. The man looked up. Even from that distance, I could tell something was wrong with his posture. His head was tilted too far back, like his neck didn't quite support it. He smiled. I didn't wait for him to respond. I returned to the booth and checked the cameras. The man didn't appear on any feed, not one. I told myself he had already left. At exactly 2:04 a.m., the elevator dinged. I hadn't called it. The doors opened by themselves. No one was inside. I didn't use the elevator that night. On the 5th night, I heard footsteps pacing near the booth. Heavy, slow. I looked through the glass. No one. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. Then something tapped on the glass. Once, twice, 3 times. I didn't move. The tapping turned into scratching. Long, dragging sounds like fingernails across glass. My radio crackled. "Why don't you come down?" a man's voice asked. It wasn't on my channel. It wasn't even through the speaker. It sounded like it was right behind my ear. I spun around. Nothing. The scratching stopped. When I checked the cameras later, I saw something that made my hands shake. On level 4, near the stairs, a group of men stood in a loose circle, all facing inward, all perfectly still. They didn't appear to be talking. They didn't move. They just stood there, watching something I couldn't see. At 2:11 a.m., they all turned their heads at the same time, toward the camera, toward me. The feed cut out. I didn't do another patrol that night. The next evening, I asked the supervisor about level 4. His face tightened. "Did you go near the stairs?" he asked. "No," I said. He exhaled slowly. "Good. What happens there?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. "People go missing in garages," he finally said. "Cars are found. Belongings are found. But sometimes the person doesn't leave." That night, I stayed in the booth. At 2:04 a.m., the elevator dinged again. This time, footsteps came out, slow, unsteady. I watched through the glass as a man stepped into view. It was the same man from before, the one who whistled. His clothes were dirty now, torn, like he'd been crawling. "You work nights," he said calmly. "Yes," I replied. "So do we." He leaned closer to the glass. Up close, I could see his eyes were wrong, too still, too aware. "You don't leave when it's quiet," he said. "That means you belong here." Behind him, more figures stepped out of the elevator. I counted at least 6, all men, all smiling, all standing too close together. My radio crackled again. This time, multiple voices spoke at once. "Come see what we do between levels." I reached for the emergency button. The lights went out. The glass door unlocked with a soft click. I don't remember running. I remember being outside, gasping for air, the night sky feeling unreal above me. I never went back. The company called, left messages, threatened termination paperwork. I didn't care. I was done. I swore I'd never work another night shift again. I meant it. But the last story didn't come from a job. It came from my own home. Because once the night learns your habits, it doesn't need a workplace to find you. I thought being home at night would be different. No cameras, no uniforms, No empty buildings designed for silence. Just my apartment, my rules, my bed. That's what I told myself. I moved into a small one-bedroom on the third floor of an old apartment complex. Cheap rent, thick walls, quiet neighbors. Most of the people there worked daytime jobs. By midnight, the building usually went still. That first week, I slept normally. Then my body remembered. I started waking up at the same time every night, 2:13 a.m., not because of a noise, not because of a dream, just awake, eyes open, heart already beating faster than it should. I'd lie there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening. At first, there was nothing. Then I noticed the hum, my refrigerator, the old wiring in the walls. It sounded exactly like the servers from the data facility. Low, steady, almost rhythmic. I told myself it was coincidence. On the fourth night, I heard footsteps above me, slow pacing, back and forth. My upstairs neighbor was an elderly man. I'd seen him during the day. He walked with a cane. His steps during the day were uneven. These weren't. They were smooth, measured, too steady to be human. At 2:13 a.m., the pacing stopped. Something thumped softly, directly above my bedroom, like a body lying down. I didn't sleep after that. The next morning, I ran into the upstairs neighbor in the hallway. I asked him casually if he'd been up late. He looked confused. "I go to bed at 9, he said. "Always have." That night, the footsteps returned, but this time they were in my apartment, not loud, barely there, like someone walking barefoot, careful not to be heard. I sat up in bed, holding my breath. The footsteps stopped outside my bedroom door. I stared at the handle. It didn't move. Instead, I heard breathing right on the other side. I whispered, "Who's there?" The breathing matched my own. Inhale, exhale, perfectly timed. I didn't open the door. I didn't sleep. The next day, I bought a camera. Just one. Cheap. I set it up in the living room, aimed at the hallway leading to my bedroom. That night, I stayed awake. At 2:12 a.m., the camera notification went off. Motion detected. I checked the live feed on my phone. The hallway was empty, but something was wrong. The camera angle was lower than before, like it had been adjusted. At 2:13 a.m., a man stepped into view. It was me. Same height, same clothes I'd worn earlier that day, same face. He stood in the hallway, staring directly into the camera, into me. He smiled. I dropped my phone. When I picked it up again, the feed was normal. Empty hallway, timestamp still running. I checked the footage the next morning. There was no record of the movement, no saved clip, just a gap in time. That's when the dreams started. Every night, I dreamed I was at work. Different places, familiar ones. The warehouse, the hospital, the garage. But I wasn't alone. There were others with me. Men who looked tired. Men who looked like they hadn't slept in years. They never spoke. They just watched me. And every time, the dream ended the same way. I'd look down and realize I was wearing a uniform I didn't recognize. One night, I woke up standing in my hallway, barefoot, facing the front door. My hand was on the lock. I don't remember getting out of bed. I don't remember deciding to leave. At 2:13 a.m., my phone buzzed. A notification from the camera. Motion detected. I was the motion. I stood there shaking, my reflection staring back at me in the dark glass of the door. Behind my reflection, someone else stood. Same shape, same posture, but not quite finished. Like a version of me that hadn't learned how to blink yet. "You stay awake," it whispered, my voice. "But wrong. You listen. You watch. You belong to the hours no one wants." I backed away slowly. It didn't follow. It didn't need to. Since that night, I don't sleep normally. I don't work nights. I don't stay awake past midnight if I can help it. But sometimes, no matter how tired I am, at 2:13 a.m., I wake up and I can hear breathing in my apartment that doesn't belong to me. Waiting, learning, hoping I'll stay awake just a little longer. After that night, I stopped trusting sleep. Sleep felt dangerous, like letting my guard down in enemy territory. I kept lights on, TV playing quietly, anything to break the silence. But silence isn't something you remove. It waits underneath. At 2:13 a.m., the power went out. Not the whole building, just my apartment. The TV shut off mid-sentence. The lights died. The hum stopped so suddenly my ears rang. In that silence, I realized something worse. I could still hear breathing, not from the hallway, from inside my bedroom. I stood frozen in the living room, my heart pounding so hard it made my vision pulse. The bedroom door was open, dark inside, too dark, like the darkness had depth. Then the breathing changed. It became slow, deliberate, as if whatever was breathing knew I was listening. I whispered, "I know you're not real." The breathing paused. Then I heard movement on my bed. The mattress creaked, a weight settling in, the exact way it does when I lie down. I didn't move. I didn't scream. I stood there, paralyzed, as the bed creaked again. Something adjusted itself. Then I heard my own voice from the bedroom, not whispering, not shouting, practicing. "I'm awake," it said softly. "I'm always awake." My legs finally unlocked. I backed away until my shoulders hit the front door. My hand found the lock without me looking. Behind me, the bedroom light turned on. I hadn't turned it on. I didn't want to look, but I did. On my bed sat something, wearing my face. Not perfectly. The skin looked stretched, like it had been pulled too tight. The eyes were open, but unfocused, blinking at the wrong times. Its mouth moved a second after the words came out. It smiled when it saw me. "See," it said, "I'm getting better." I shook my head violently. "This isn't happening," I said. It stood up. When it walked, its joints moved wrong, like it had learned how from watching me, not from being me. "You leave every night, place," it said calmly. "You don't belong to days. You belong to gaps." It took a step closer. The air around it felt colder, heavier, like pressure before a storm. "I've been watching," it continued, "learning how long you can stay awake, how long before you listen." My back pressed against the door. "I'm not like you," I said. It tilted its head. "You are," it replied. "You just pretend in daylight." Behind it, the hallway filled with shapes, not bodies, suggestions of bodies. Men standing too close together, all facing me, all with my posture, my height, my exhaustion. Their mouths moved slightly. None of them blinked. "You worked while others slept," the thing said. "You heard us when no one else would." It raised a hand. Its fingers were too long. You made space for us." I screamed then, not because I was scared, but because I understood the night doesn't chase everyone. It chooses people who stay awake, people who listen, people who get used to silence. The power came back on. The bedroom was empty, the bed untouched. The apartment looked normal. Too normal. I collapsed to the floor and cried until morning. I moved out 2 days later. Different city, different job, daylight only. But here's the part I don't tell people. Sometimes when I catch my reflection in a dark window, it blinks late. Sometimes I wake up exhausted, even after sleeping 8 hours, like I was somewhere else, working, listening. And every now and then, just before dawn, when the world is quiet enough, I hear my own voice whisper from somewhere nearby, "Stay awake." And I know one day I won't be able to tell which one of us is supposed to be here anymore. After I moved, I tried to live like a normal man again. Morning alarms, sunlight through windows, coffee, noise, people. I chose an apartment on a busy street, so there would always be sound, cars, voices, sirens, anything but silence. For a while, it worked. The nights felt empty again, harmless, until I realized something was wrong with the clocks. Every digital clock in the apartment skipped 1 minute. It didn't matter what device it was, phone, microwave, laptop, alarm clock. At 2:12 a.m., it would blink and jump to 2:14. I never saw 2:13. At first, I thought it was a glitch, a software issue. I reset everything, changed devices, bought a brand new alarm clock. Same result. The minute didn't exist anymore, but my body still did. Because even without seeing the time, I woke up with my heart racing. Every night, sweating, breath shallow, like something had just left the room. I started recording audio while I slept, just to prove to myself I wasn't imagining it. The first few nights, nothing. Then, on the 5th recording, I heard movement, bed sheets shifting, footsteps, and breathing that didn't belong to me. Then my voice, calm, alert, awake. "I'm up," it said. I don't remember waking up, but the recording showed I spoke for almost 40 minutes. Sometimes there was silence between my sentences, like I was listening. One night, I decided to stay awake on purpose. I drank coffee, energy drinks, kept the lights on, sat on the couch staring straight ahead. If it needed sleep, I wouldn't give it any. Midnight passed. 1 bar. 2 clear all a.m. My eyes burned, but I stayed awake. At 2:12 a.m., the room felt heavier. The air thickened. The sounds outside faded, not stopped. Faded, like they were being pulled away from me. I checked the clock. 2:12. I stared at it, waiting. It blinked, skipped, 2:14. But this time, I felt the missing minute. My vision dimmed, not black, blurred, like my brain had been muted. And in that gap, something moved. I couldn't see it, but I felt my body stand up. I felt my jaw move. I felt myself walking toward the bedroom. I was conscious, but I wasn't in control. Inside my head, I screamed. My body didn't react. I heard myself speaking softly. "Still awake," I said. "Good." I watched from behind my own eyes as I opened the bedroom door. The mirror on the closet reflected me, but I wasn't looking at myself. I was looking at something standing behind me, too close. Same height, same shoulders, but unfinished, like a draft. It leaned forward until its mouth was inches from my ear. "This is the minute you don't get," it whispered. My body nodded. Agreed. Then the pressure released. I was back on the couch, gasping. The clock read 2 hour time. I threw up. That was the night I understood the truth. It wasn't copying me. It was practicing, using my body during the time no one remembers, the missing minute. After that, things escalated. I'd find objects moved slightly. Shoes facing the door. My phone unlocked with messages typed, but never sent. One message draft said only, "Still usable." I stopped sleeping in my apartment. I slept in my car during the day. Parks, parking lots, anywhere the sun was visible. But the night followed me. Streetlights hummed too loudly. Reflections lingered too long. Once in a store window, I saw myself standing behind me, mouthing words I hadn't said yet. I finally went to a doctor. Sleep disorder, they said. Dissociation. Stress-induced hallucinations. They gave me pills. The pills made it easier for it. On the third night, after starting them, I woke up standing outside my apartment building, barefoot, in the cold. My keys were in my hand. The security camera above the entrance blinked red. When I checked the footage later, it showed me leaving at 2:13 a.m., smiling, walking normally, looking comfortable. I wasn't smiling when I woke up. I stopped taking the pills, stopped sleeping. Days blurred. My face looked wrong in mirrors, slightly delayed, slightly off. And then came the final sign. I received an email from my own address. Timestamp, 2:13 a.m. Subject line, shift confirmed. The message was short. "You don't need daylight anymore. We've got this one covered." That's when I knew. One night, I won't wake up at all. One night, I'll stay in the missing minute. And whatever has been learning how to be me will finish the shift. If you're listening to this late at night, if the world is quiet, if you're still awake when everyone else sleeps, pay attention to your clocks. Because if a minute ever disappears, it didn't vanish. It was taken, and something is using it to learn how to stand where you are now. After that email, I stopped trying to fight it, not because I accepted it, but because fighting required energy, and I was running out. I began to understand something that terrified me more than the thing itself. It wasn't violent. It wasn't angry. It was patient. It didn't need to rush. It had all the time I was losing. I stopped telling people what was happening. Every explanation sounded insane the moment I spoke it out loud. Friends avoided my calls anyway. I looked wrong. I moved wrong, like someone imitating exhaustion instead of feeling it. I took a week off work. Daylight hurt my eyes now, not physically, emotionally, like I didn't belong in it anymore. I felt exposed during the day, seen. Night felt familiar, too familiar. On the 7th night, I didn't wake up at 2:13 a.m. That was the first thing that scared me. I woke up later, much later. The room was dim, not dark, not light. That soft gray that exists just before dawn. My body felt heavy, used. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no notifications. But my step counter said I'd walked over 4,000 steps. I hadn't left the bed. In the bathroom mirror, I noticed something small, a mark on my neck, not a bruise, not a cut, more like a pressure mark. as if someone had rested their fingers there for a long time. Testing. That night, I didn't try to stay awake. I lay in bed, still listening. The hum returned, faint at first, then clearer, not coming from appliances anymore, coming from inside the walls, inside the floor, inside me. At 2:12 a.m., I felt it before I saw it, that familiar heaviness, the room growing distant. Like my senses were being gently unplugged, I whispered, "Please." I don't know who I was talking to. The clock blinked, skipped, and this time I didn't come back immediately. I was standing in a place that looked like my apartment, but quieter, softer, like a memory of it. The walls were slightly wrong, corners too smooth, shadows too dark, and I wasn't alone. Men stood around me, dozens of them, all familiar, all tired. Some wore uniforms, security, hospital scrubs, work jackets, all-night jobs. Their faces were calm, empty. None of them spoke. At the center of the room stood the thing that wore me. It looked better now, more complete. Its blinking was almost natural. Its smile was gentle. "You did well," it said. "You listened longer than most." I tried to speak. No sound came out. "You don't disappear," it continued. "You rest. We take over the waiting." It gestured around the room. "They all stayed awake," it said. "They all heard us. That's how we exist." It stepped closer. I noticed then that its shadow didn't touch the floor. "You're tired," it said softly. "You don't have to hold the body anymore." Something inside me broke, not violently, quietly, like letting go of a breath I'd been holding for years. The room faded. I woke up in my bed. Morning light. Through the window. Birds outside. My body felt fine, rested, normal. Too normal. I checked the clock. 7:02 a.m. No missing time. No panic. For the first time in months, I felt okay. That's when I realized what was wrong. I couldn't remember the fear. I remembered the events, but not the feeling. Like reading someone else's story. I got up, showered, dressed. In the mirror, my reflection moved perfectly with me. No delay, no hesitation. As I left the apartment, my phone buzzed. A notification sent from my own email. No subject, just one line. "Thank you for staying awake. I'm writing this now because something tells me I won't again. Not because I'll be gone, but because I won't feel the need to warn anyone. The night doesn't hunt. It replaces, slowly, quietly, 1 minute at a time. So, if you're listening to this late, if your room feels a little too quiet, if you notice a minute missing from your clock, don't panic. That means it's already learning you, and it's very patient.